Welcome back to the C Space Studio here at CES 2023. I am James Kotecki, joined by Mindshare North America CEO Amanda Richman. Welcome to the C Space Studio.
Great to be here, James.
So what does Mindshare North America, what does that brand mean here at the beginning of 2023?
So Mindshare North America and around the world stands for good growth. And there couldn't be a better place to share that than at CES when it's all about how do we drive growth for our clients. But we also see it through the lens of driving good growth for our people and for the industry at large. And that means growth that's not only thinking short-term growth and around quarterly earnings and helping our clients grow in those windows, but long-term growth that's enduring and diversified and sustainable.
And so can you give us a kind of a snapshot of your place within the overall ecosystem here, the advertising ecosystem?
Exactly. So Mindshare is the largest media agency within Group M, which is one of the largest media networks.
Yes.
Within WPP, the largest media holding company.
Right.
So we sit on top of a lot of opportunity to look at how we can connect with customers, help our clients grow their business, understanding the context of technology and content and data, and the intersection of all of that happens right here at CES.
It sounds like a bit of a Russian doll organization, but how does that actually work in practice? Because you are the CEO, which implies a certain amount of autonomy in what you're doing, separate from the rest of it.
We think there's such opportunity in scale and connectivity across our sister agencies, particularly when you look at how complex marketing communications is these days, and to have those relationships to bring in the right level of expertise across WPP family and our Group M agencies as well, to make sure we're casting the right teams and talent for the client challenges. And so that gives us this access to have the Uber network, but still have the autonomy and the brand distinction of what we stand for to attract the right talent and make sure we're marrying to our clients' values too.
So good growth for your clients. Is there a specific kind of client, kind of industry, kind of business problem that you're most apt to solve?
Today it's all about how do you reconcile brand and demand and move from an era where those areas were sometimes separated, sometimes by client decisions, building performance units separate from brand building agencies, whether that's through in-housing or through their own design of having a portfolio of different marketing partners. Where we sit is to bring that together because we do see this full funnel opportunity of connecting the consumer experience with speed.
I want to break that down for folks because this goes all over CES. So the demand side is let's say Google AdWords, for example, like trying to get clicks right now, give me some leads in the door right now, I'm going to measure it, it's going to be hyper-targeted.
You got it. Think customer acquisition, fine-tune, in the moment, always optimizing, always on.
And the brand building side is maybe a little bit more ephemeral, you still want to track it with as much data as possible, but it's about, for example, sponsoring things like the C Space Studio, as our partner Salesforce have, things like that.
Exactly, right? It's building brand loyalty, awareness, consideration into then that demand generation side, but it's a longer view. And sometimes you have to take that investment, actually all the time, make that investment ahead of seeing that immediate performance and conversion.
How do you see those two getting tied together in an optimal way? What are some things that people, if they have them in different silos, need to understand to kind of weave those together?
Exactly. The number one thing is to really understand your audience, understand who you're trying to reach, and that will start to inform then how do you start to reach them in ways that will inform their awareness and start to build some of those brand connections. We do that through ways of looking at some emotional signals as well, and then bringing that into understanding their behavior across channels and being able to measure against that as well, which gets to then how you convert to performance. And increasingly that also means all the way through commerce. And that's probably the interesting growth space for this year as well, more of the retail media networks, commerce investment, and plugging that all the way through.
I want to talk about retail media, but you did mention emotional signals, so just curiosity, what kind of emotional signals and how are you measuring that?
Exactly. So at Mindshare, actually one of our capabilities is an area we call the Neuro Lab, and it's the opportunity to actually—
Very futuristic.
Very futuristic, exactly. Neuro and lab bringing together, and it's about better understanding, and it's through some of those typical signals and goggles and testing mechanisms as well as research, but to start to see people's reaction, whether it's to the creative or the context, and have that help inform how we think more holistically about our audience.
So retail media, do you have a sense of a snapshot of that at the beginning of 2023, this idea of advertising that's reaching consumers at, in retail environments, sometimes that's in physical locations, sometimes that's on the web, in terms of when they're ready to buy something, it's an ad that is popping up next to that experience.
Yes, no, I think the snapshot is this, right? It's been up, up, up for the last few years. And it's been fascinating to see how the media dollars have really started to shift from some of that brand building media in other channels to the retail media networks where there's that measurement of performance. And that's what we're trying to do is make sure we've got accountability in those retail media networks as well.
And I guess in some ways, maybe in retrospect, it seems kind of obvious, right? Instead of having to do all this complicated data measuring to figure out people's intent, it's like, no, they're on the page, they're ready to buy this thing. Obviously, they're interested in that kind of a product at that time. Right. But it's obviously far more complicated than that. What are the biggest challenges you see in retail media right now?
Right now, the fragmentation, right? So all of the different retail media networks may have the knowledge of within their own space. How can you control that, and how can you complement what's happening in store with advertising? But we want to see holistically, as people do shop across stores and across physical environments and online, and have a broader picture of what that flow is. So how we're supporting it is, how do we think about working with those retail media networks to better understand how they build out and define their audience segments, and where we can find them off of their brand channels as well.
Is there a client example you can share of a place where that works especially well?
It's all, honestly, a lot of it's in development, and it's understanding it kind of a brand at a time, and then scaling it up into that category and into that portfolio.
Yeah.
But you're starting to see more of that with all the major players, whether it's Kroger, Roundel, Walmart Connect, and certainly Amazon as well. All of them are being more open to sharing data and more thoughtful about how do you measure that action beyond just building awareness into their platform conversions.
Speaking of thoughtfulness, one thing that a lot of people here at CES are thoughtful of is the theme of CES, which is human security for all. This is a new theme that CES has this year. It's this idea around human security, meaning things like food security, economic security, health security, overall security for people. Is that a theme that kind of resonates with the work that you do? Yes,
as a good growth agency, for sure, Mindshare connects with that notion of human safety, human security. How can we do things through intentional media investment that helps society, not only drives brand building? Yeah. And so those opportunities like sustainability, where we've been focused on carbon calculators and developing a measurement framework that we can share across the industry, work around social media and the impact it's having, and how can we make sure we're not in toxic environments, or even research we've done recently around bodily autonomy, so we can understand more about how do we think about women and men's view of health and health access these days.
Any interesting data points come out of that bodily autonomy study?
Interesting, actually, was the men's perspective, right? And also very leaned into making sure that everyone has bodily rights, and making sure this isn't only a women's issue. No, this hits all of humanity, back to your human safety and security.
So it sounds like you have this kind of ethical lens on the work that you're doing. Are there times, and you don't have to get into the specifics here, but are there times when you're presented with ethical challenges of like, are there kind of like, it would be easy to turn this lever and get this result, but in the long term, that's not what we actually want to do?
Great question. Now, we do think performance and purpose can coexist. And when we have some of those challenges, it creates a great opportunity for a debate and discussion with clients to bring them in and to say, what are our choices here? And understanding where our values are and making sure we're articulating that before we're into the marketplace guides those decisions. Does it stand true to their values and what their objectives are?
Yeah. As an advertising professional, do you feel like you are immune to advertising in some way, or just view it differently? Because obviously you're also a consumer, you're out in the world, you're being bombarded with advertising all the time, you're in retail environments, you're getting this retail media yourself. Do you feel like you're always at work because you're always kind of thinking through it through that lens? How do you turn off that part of your brain?
That's such a great question, because yes, how can you not overanalyze the message, the placement, the context, what hits at the heart? And that's what advertising still can do so well, storytelling. It hits you at kind of an instinctual, emotional, heart level, and that actually can still move me to tears when it's great ads.
Is there a particularly memorable ad that really sticks with you? There's, for example, for me, sometimes I'll go back and I'll watch the old Air Jordan commercials on YouTube, and those Nike commercials, around the World Cup from several years ago. Some of those sports commercials, obviously, that's really good storytelling. Are there things like that for you that truly resonate?
That's great. So this is probably the most overused example in the history of advertising, but the Apple spot that really broke through the screen, and it was at that era too.
1984.
Of like, you got it, and I remember seeing that in the Super Bowl at that year, and being a young girl, and also having that sense of empowerment too, and how that was cast, as well as the message it sent of change and innovation.
I think it's interesting that a lot of this idea around mission, certainly Steve Jobs and the agency that he was working with at that time certainly represented this idea that advertising can kind of have this higher purpose and tell this higher story. Is it your sense as a CEO that more and more people, younger people that you're hiring now, is that an increasing sentiment for people to kind of want that sense of storytelling and a higher story, a higher purpose?
Absolutely. I think people are attracted to our space, whether it's agency side, marketing side, and media. They see there's an opportunity to make a bigger impact, to craft the messages and story that get out to the world. And to do that in ways that might not only be working at the Ad Council and doing pro bono work, but also just saying how can we make sure that we're replicating more diversity in the casting and supporting diverse suppliers as well and media partners and making sure that we're helping their businesses grow and invest more in the content that is meeting those needs of the underserved communities. So there can be purpose in our business, and I think that's finally getting the spotlight that it deserves.
Does good growth have a position on the metaverse? How do you think about the metaverse from that lens?
Exactly. We think about the metaverse from first, as with any marketing channel, trying to understand what is the purpose for a marketer to be there. Is there a way for marketers to add value in that experience? Is it just being present and making sure there's an awareness level? So understanding what's the role versus let's just jump to it to try and put the press release out there. It's got to be more than that.
Yeah. Last question, 2023 will be the year of blank.
Year of humanity. I think we're seeing this here at CES, right? More human connection, as much as we're seeing impressive executions around AI and what's happening, that in our future, certainly people still want to connect and have that heart in conversations. And
well,
thank you. Too predictable.
Exactly, and thank you so much for connecting with us here in the C Space Studio. Amanda Richman, Mindshare North America. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, James.
And thanks for watching. This is the C Space Studio sponsored by Salesforce. We're here at CES 2023 talking with marketing, media, branding leaders, and more great conversations are on the way. I'm James Kotecki. Keep it here.